Welcome everyone, I'm Yashni Padiachi and this is Africa Matters. People in Niger are now facing the fifth military coup in their nation's history. We find out what daily life is like for them and we'll head to neighboring Nigeria. It's not only leading regional mediation efforts, but also racing to catch up with routine vaccinations for children, trying to bring them to pre-pandemic levels. More than 2 weeks since the coup in Niger, the military junta continues to tighten its grip on power. They've ignored calls to reinstate ousted President Mohamed Bazoum and rejected mediation efforts by the United Nations, African Union and the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS. Instead, General Abdurrahman Tiani declared himself the country's new leader and appointed a civilian prime minister and cabinet just days after the military takeover. Some Nigerians who support the coup leaders say they are against both the ECOWAS threat of military intervention and France's long presence in the region. But others, like former rebel leader and politician Rissa Agbula, launched a movement opposing the military government, widely seen as a sign of internal resistance to army rule. ECOWAS imposed economic sanctions on Niger, closing borders with the landlocked country. Military leaders responded to the threat of military intervention by closing the airspace after they failed to meet a deadline to reinstate the ousted president. But the traders doing business across the borders and the United Nations say they are already feeling the impact.
There are no roads. It's a big problem. We hope for a quick solution and we ask God to bring us peace. And we understand our authorities. The ECOWAS decision to close the borders is not a good one.
What ECOWAS is trying to achieve is not really what it, in the sense that Africa as a whole, especially the Western region, has been under bad leadership. And I think ECOWAS never at any point in time embraced themselves to come together to help the citizens with good governance. So when people now decide to now take over government, you know, the juntas in Niger and the rest of it, the citizens of Niger, they love what is happening. So I feel that ECOWAS coming in to replace democracy back in Niger is an effort that's not going to make a whole lot of sense.
There are obviously ripple effects that we're concerned with for the whole region. I mean, this is a very integrated region from socio-political, economic dimensions, and Niger being isolated or levels of violence or conflict extending beyond would certainly disrupt that natural kind of network that allows Niger to function properly. And first and foremost, the people will suffer.
Well, let's hear more now from Ikemisit Effiong. He's the head of research at SBM Intelligence, Nigeria's leading geopolitical intelligence platform, and he joins me from Lagos, Nigeria. Thanks for speaking to us here on Africa Matters. Now, Niger is one of the world's poorest countries. Now it's been hit with economic sanctions, aid is being withheld, even electricity supply from Nigeria has been cut off. Do these sanctions hurt or help the people of Niger?
Well, in the short term, they're likely to hurt rather than help, right? The entire idea is you've got to think about this from the regional standpoint, right, in one key way. And ECOWAS thinks that its real options here are either diplomacy paired with economic pressure to get the coup plotters in Niger at least back to the negotiating table, or committed in some way, shape, or form to a transition back to democratic rule, or military intervention. And military intervention is rankly unpopular, not just within Niger, but also amongst ECOWAS member states, particularly right in Nigeria, which, if any regional coalition that's put together towards organizing any sort of intervention will actually lead that coalition, right? And so really, and for Nigeria and for other ECOWAS member states, they really feel that this is really the only option, right? The only real viable option that's popular enough with their electorate.
Yeah, at least for the time being, because one of the reasons the junta gave for taking power in the first place was that not enough, they felt, was being done by the government or fast enough to eliminate security and terrorist threats, which are really still very prevalent in the Sahel region as a whole. They don't like foreign forces and bases being in Niger. And they've also now asked for help from Russia's Wagner Group, even though they've not been able to stop the security threats in Mali and Burkina Faso. Should the junta be moving to some sort of sovereignty and less reliance on any sort of foreign help?
Well, that would be the ideal, right? Full-throated absolute sovereignty. But the fact of the matter remains that we're talking about one of the poorest countries in the world, right? Niger's game plan will always involve some sort of regional or international support or engagement with the country, right? Which still relies on development aid, right? Either from the West or from countries like even Turkey, right, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, right, in order to prop up its budget, to ensure that intervention programs around food and agriculture and all other sort of economic interventions are supported within the country. So even in the best of times, even without military intervention, even with all of the support from its regional and international partners, Niger was already in a precarious socio-economic and political state. Now, with very little clarity on whether the coup leaders are actually fully in charge of all of the machineries of state, and obviously with the fact that much of the region, right, stands in opposition to the current path that it's taking, it definitely needs some kind of support. And that's where Russia, the Wagner Group, comes in, as the premise of your question has highlighted. And Wagner actually has a checkered record in terms of actually delivering in outcomes on the ground from a security standpoint, but with very few friends within the region and with precious few friends internationally, Niger really feels as though it has no other option than to look to Russia and to Wagner in this instance.
And so Wagner, we speak about Wagner in terms of security. What about China, though? Because the Chinese are already in Niger. They say they are economic partners there in the exploration of oil and other minerals. We know Niger is very rich in uranium, which France benefits from. But now that France or the government or the military in Niger is trying to get France out of the country and doesn't want any involvement with the French, could this pave the way for more Chinese influence to China's benefit coming into Niger?
Well, in theory, it could, right? And ostensibly, the Chinese themselves have said that they are committed, right, to a restoration of civilian and constitutional order in Niger. But China's track record in West and Central Africa is that they can basically do a deal with anyone. They're perfectly fine, working with all sorts of partners of all sorts of political affiliations and stripes. And so, in that sense, the coup. The coup represents an opportunity, right, and an opening for the Chinese to make more inroads, right, into Niger from a resource access perspective.
And finally, just very quickly, Ikemis, at the end of the day, it's the people of Niger and many of that country's neighbors who are going to be feeling this the most. As you've been saying, these are some of the poorest countries in the world.
Yes, very much so. In the end, geopolitics, politics, diplomacy, all of these things have a real world impact on the ground. And I think what we're seeing right now in Niger is that, ECOWAS has now come to the realization that, Mali wasn't an isolated event, Burkina Faso, Guinea, right, weren't isolated events. And Niger has become the final domino where the region has basically said, we don't want this anymore. We don't want to go back to the era of, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. And if this requires, everyday Nigerians or Malians or Burkinabes or Guineans to pay, a heightened price in terms of, in terms of living costs, in terms of poverty, in terms of, economic access, and that's the price we're paying. And it's a bit unfortunate that we are in this era, but that's certainly the calibration, certainly here within the region.
Ekemisit Effiong from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much for your analysis. It's been great talking to you.
An absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We have more stories coming up for you here on Africa Matters, including...
I am Pauline David in Abuja. I'll tell you how Nigeria is strengthening efforts to reach every child with the vaccine they need to prevent diseases.
I am Harrison Tamfo in Cameroon's far north region, where an agricultural program established by the International Committee of the Red Cross is helping displaced people survive.
In Nigeria, an estimated 6.2 million children missed out on their routine vaccines between 2019 and 2022 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now the government is trying to get vaccines to children who need them and bring down rates of child mortality from vaccine-preventable diseases. Paulum David has more from the capital, Abuja.
No one likes to see babies crying. But these brief moments of pain means protection against a host of diseases, including diphtheria, polio, hepatitis B, and measles. The World Health Organization sets out a list of up to 20 vaccine shots recommended for all children in Nigeria, and they are provided free of charge at primary health care centers.
At birth, she was given BCG. So at 6 weeks, I brought her for Rota and Penta immunization. So they told me that at 10 weeks, I should bring her back for the second dose, which I brought her. So and so on and so from that 10 weeks, they'll still tell you another time you're bringing the child for subsequent immunizations. So that is why I have come today. I think today is the last one I'm giving her at 15 months.
Child mortality in Nigeria is high, with 1 in 10 children dying before their 5th birthday. And part of that is due to poor immunization uptake. According to UNICEF, myths, disinformation, and misinformation make people reluctant to have their children vaccinated. Only 36% of children aged 12 to 23 months received all recommended vaccines. COVID-19 made the already significant problem worse, which led to an outbreak of vaccine-preventable diseases like diphtheria.
That family that actually refused the vaccination did death. Those deaths of about 4 of them that died, although 1 confirmed case from diphtheria, actually motivated them when we reached out to them to take the vaccine. They are beginning to accept the vaccine. But we don't want people to actually get to that level before they believe in the vaccination, the benefit of vaccination.
Every day we vaccinate not less than 100 and something children in FCT, in our own facility. That's in our own facility, which I know other facilities are also do same. You understand? And the mothers also will also sensitize them on proper hygiene for their homes and their children, how to take care of themselves, their children.
According to UNICEF, 20.5 million children missed out on 1 or more vaccines delivered through routine immunization services in 2022, compared to 24.4 million children the previous year.
Nigerian health authorities say there are plenty of vaccines to go around, even in the most remote and hard-to-reach areas. They are hoping to reduce the number of children who have had no vaccine doses at all by 15% in 2024 and 80% by the end of 2028. Paulum David, African Matters, Abuja.
To Uganda now, which is facing a different kind of healthcare challenge. Many nurses say they intend to leave their home country for other opportunities abroad. Romesa Chodar has more.
Ivan Bafake is a Ugandan nurse. He spends hours searching for job opportunities outside his country. The 26-year-old is among thousands who have not joined the country's healthcare workforce.
The situation here is too bad. You can't make it. It's hard. Whereas so many people can, whereas a few of the nurses can make it here, very many nurses like me, it's a hassle for them to make it here.
Ugandan officials say the problem is caused by the wage bill.
We needed like 40,000 nurses in our health sector. But because of the wage bill, the government have less money, so our nurses are overworked in this sector. So we are looking at the welfare of a nurse who has trained and remain at home. You have a degree, but you are not employed anywhere because of the wage bill.
Uganda's health ministry says it has already put policies in place to ensure nurses and health workers are absorbed into the public sector. But despite shortfalls in staffing, it is unable to stop the brain drain, and many other countries are calling on Ugandan nurses for their services.
It is true that African countries have lost many of their workforces, especially health, to other countries for many reasons. And yet African countries have not yet reached the World Health Organization recommendations for the number of health workforce per population. I think in Uganda we are as low as 2 per 10,000 doctors per population. Still, we cannot stop them from migrating.
But the loss of nurses to foreign countries has not been solved. While many students continue to enroll at nursing schools and are eager to work in their homeland, many are already planning to move abroad and apply their skills elsewhere. Rumeysa Chodar, Africa Matters.
When Zimbabwe's longtime ruler Robert Mugabe's reign ended in 2017, many hoped it would also bring an end to the country's deep financial woes. But 6 years on, the economy is still in tatters and citizens face one of the highest inflation rates in the world. And that's expected to be a key issue in the election on the 23rd of August. Priyanka Navani reports.
Tendai Mubaiwa is among the 70% of Zimbabweans who don't have formal jobs. Many, including Tendai, spend their afternoons here in pool halls, hoping to make some quick cash.
There is nothing to do in the township, so we play pool for a living. We play 3 tournaments every week, and winners can get up to $250. But you have to put in $5, sometimes $10 as joining fee. As you can see, most of the players are quite young.
But with inflation over 100%, even those with steady streams of income are struggling. 51-year-old Regina Ruona says her late husband's monthly pension, the equivalent of about $5, is barely enough to cover 2 kilograms of sugar and 2 liters of cooking oil.
We used to have a strong currency and could afford a decent living, but life has become more difficult over the past 10 years.
It was thought that Robert Mugabe's ouster in 2017 would ease the economic situation, but things only seem to worsen. Now Zimbabweans are putting their faith in the first election since then.
If everything goes well during the election, perhaps we might just have a better life, because right now we are really struggling.
The ruling party, which insists the economy is set to grow 6% this year, will face off against an opposition that is also promising financial growth. But experts say the election could very well be disputed, just as it was in 2018, amid allegations of election fraud and what the opposition called a crackdown on critics. Priyanka Navani, Africa Matters.
Attacks by the Boko Haram terror group have forced thousands of Cameroonians to flee to the country's far north, many of them struggling to eke out a living in their host communities. But the International Committee of the Red Cross has stepped in to help them resume their farming activities. Arison Tamfu traveled to the volatile Kerawa locality to find out how the program is helping.
A few years ago, Haja Sheribo and her 13 children barely had enough food to eat. Life was not easy. We could not eat for days, she says. Wandala Huda says things were so bad that his 22 children almost starved. Sheribo and Huda now live in Kerawa, in Cameroon's far north region that shares a porous border with Nigeria. The majority of people here were displaced by Boko Haram raids. But thanks to an agricultural program by the International Committee of the Red Cross, they are now earning a living through farming.
At first, we will go to the bush and harvest any leaves to eat just like that. But we are now fine since ICRC came to assist us. They give us seeds, red millet, maize, okra, and many other farming items. They also help us with cash to do the field work.
So far this year, the initiative has assisted 26,000 people in the conflict zone. Tens of thousands of people affected by the armed conflict in this part of Cameroon are struggling to find work and earn a living. The ICRC initiative is now helping several families to eat as well as generate income to cover their daily basic needs.
Through this assistance, they no longer go begging, they no longer go stealing, and they no longer die of starvation. Because there are some families who could not eat before the ICRC program. With the assistance of ICRC, they have access to good quality fertilizer. They produce and meet their needs, not only food needs, but also health needs, because they harvest and sell their products and are able to go to hospital to treat themselves.
More than half of displaced persons in Cameroon come from agricultural backgrounds, and they have brought valuable farming skills to their new communities. They may not be able to return home anytime soon, but the program is helping feed themselves and find a sense of purpose. Arisin Tamfu, Africa Matters, Kerawa, Cameroon.
To Burkina Faso now, where designers are attempting to localize the fashion market through the use of a hand-woven burkinab fabric. But they're up against cheap imports from wealthier countries that still dominate the industry, making it an uphill battle. Malik Fuda reports.
In Paris, and under fashion great Marc Jacobs, Francois Yamego learned a lot. But years ago, the Burkinabe native wanted to realize a new dream, bringing Faso Danfani, Burkina Faso's traditional fabric, to the attention of the fashion industry.
Cotton is pure for children, and the whole world is fighting over it. Cotton is noble and we don't know its value, so now it's up to us to value it and use it. And to know that not only does it create jobs, it's also good for our health to wear cotton.
But currently, most cotton in the country comes from abroad, which the UN says prices out local products and makes poverty worse.
We've been inundated with thrift store products from Asia, and that's not normal. We don't even know how these products are made in terms of health.
The country seems to have gotten behind Yamego's initiative. Burkina Faso's ruling junta recently named Faso Danfani the country's official state dress, and customers are sharing in the message behind it.
Faso Danfani, first of all, it's a Burkina Faso product. It's good for the country's economy. I chose François because of its quality. It's a local product, well modernized, and that's what got me interested. It's for the development of the country. And when I put my money in, I know that François employs a lot of people and feeds a lot of families.
Yamego calls his effort to internationalize Burkina's white gold noble. And in a full circle moment, his designs were even displayed on a Parisian catwalk last month. Malik Fuda, Africa Matters.
This week, we're exploring Beira in Mozambique. In 2019, Southern Africa's deadliest tropical cyclone caused catastrophic damage in the city and surrounding areas. Let's take a closer look. And that's our show this week. Please do share your thoughts about the stories you've seen or ideas on what you'd like us to cover. You can do so on X, formerly known as Twitter, using the hashtag Africa Matters. You can also watch this episode and more on YouTube. Just search for Africa Matters TRT World. Like, comment, and don't forget to share. Until the next time, take care and goodbye.